From your ears to your heart, we bring the light of knowledge to illuminate your life. ilmwaves.com, where we make ilm possible.
Bismillah walhamdulillah wa sallallahu wa sallam ala rasulillah. Allahumma la sahla illa ma ja'altahu sahla wa anta ya hayyu ya qayyum taj'alul hazna idha shi'ta sahla. I start off by praising Allah, the Lord of the worlds, and I humbly ask Him to raise the rank of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and to protect his nation from that which he fears for it, and to raise the rank of his companions and his kind al. I ask Allah Ta'ala to grant us the sincere intentions and to grant us the proper comprehension. Brothers and sisters, barakallahu feekum. May Allah Ta'ala reward you. I appreciate you coming out to attend these lessons. This is the first of many lessons, insha'Allah Ta'ala, where we will cover a very important matter in Islam, insha'Allah. As you know, the Islamic knowledge is vast. There is the knowledge of hadith, there is the knowledge of tafsir, there is the knowledge of the Quran, the science of the Quran, some call it. There is the aqidah, there is balagha, there is adab. There are many fields of knowledge in Islam. Insha'Allah Ta'ala, in these lessons, in this lesson series, we will be covering a topic that deals with the hadith. Insha'Allah, we will be going over the 40 hadith of an-Nawawiyy, also known in Arabic as al-Arba'in an-Nawawiyya, the 40 hadiths of Imam an-Nawawiyy, insha'Allah Ta'ala. Thank you for attending, and I encourage those who are attending to keep on attending, and I ask Allah Ta'ala to make them steadfast, and I also encourage those who are listening on the internet, who will be listening to these audio lessons, to continue listening and to be steadfast and to exert the proper effort into listening to these audios, insha'Allah Ta'ala, so that you may benefit and hence benefit others, insha'Allah. So we'll be going over the 40 hadith of Imam an-Nawawiyy, as we mentioned. We will start off by mentioning a brief biography of this great prominent scholar in Islam, Imam an-Nawawiyy. We will talk about his life, his times, mention some of the stories and things that occurred to him when he was young, where he was raised, where he was born, where he passed away. You will benefit. Wallahi, brothers and sisters, the information that you are about to hear is something that you don't hear too often. And I highly encourage you to be steadfast and to continue benefiting from these lessons. So we will start off by mentioning a brief biography, and then we will clarify certain matters in his book, because Imam an-Nawawiyy, he authored many books. And there are a few books out there which have certain matters or certain things that need clarification. If someone out there wants to read the books of Imam an-Nawawiyy, he needs to know these certain matters that need to be clarified in his book. And inshallah ta'ala, we will talk about those also. So we will start off with the biography, talk about some things that need to be clarified in his books, and then we will mention a brief introduction to this book, Arba'in an-Nawawiyy, the 40 hadith of an-Nawawiyy. We will talk about it, the origins, we will talk about how it's compiled. You will love it, honestly. This is beautiful. When I was learning this knowledge, this information, it would make my heart quiver, honestly, from the beauty and from the eloquence and from the barakah, subhanallah. So after mentioning the introduction to the book, what this book is about, then we will get into the gist of our subject matter, our topic, and that is explaining the 40 hadith of an-Nawawiyy, insha'Allah. We will mention the first hadith, the second hadith, like that, and we will take as many lessons as we have to, as needed, to explain these hadiths clearly, and to extract as much of the benefit as we can from those hadith, insha'Allah ta'ala. Some hadiths are longer than others, some are not. We will, insha'Allah ta'ala, we will try to do justice to each hadith and try to explain it as much as we can. Of course, there are a lot of information. We will try our best, insha'Allah. May Allah ta'ala grant us the strength and the motivation to continue with this beneficial series, insha'Allah. His name is Muhyiddin Yahya ibn Sharaf, ibn Mur, ibn Hassan, ibn Hussein, ibn Muhammad, ibn Jum'ah, ibn Hizam an-Nawawiyy. and he is a popular Shafi'i scholar. And he was called an-Nawawiyy because he came from the city of Nawa. That's where he was born. And this is a city in the area of Harran, which is in the south of Damascus. And one of his grandfathers settled there in Nawa, and they had offsprings. And among the offsprings of this lineage, of this family, was this great scholar, an-Nawawiyy, Abu Zakaria Muhyiddin Yahya ibn Sharaf an-Nawawiyy. Abu Zakaria is his kunya, label if you want to say, although he never had a child named Zakaria. You say an-Nawawiyy, or you can say an-Nawawiyy, right? Some people call him an-Nawawiyy, and some of them call him an-Nawawiyy, mashallah. In some of his books he wrote an-Nawawiyy, and in some of his other books he wrote an-Nawawiyy. Like when you author a book and you write your name on it, he wrote sometimes an-Nawawiyy, and then sometimes he would write an-Nawawiyy. So both are valid. And Imam an-Nawawiyy was raised in the city of Nawa, and there is where he learned and memorized the Quran. He is also considered to be Dimashqi, meaning that he's from the city of Dimashq, which is also known as Damascus. Even though he is not a native of that city, he is considered to be from it because he went there when he was 19 and he spent many years in that city of Damascus, mashallah. And Abdullah ibn Mubarak said if anyone enters a city and stays there for 4 years or more, he is considered to be from that city. So yes, he's considered an-Nawawiyy because he's from the city of Nawa, but he's also considered to be Dimashqi, right, because he is from Dimashq or Damascus, mashallah. He only left the city of Damascus a few times. He left it once to perform Hajj, and another time to return to his city of Nawa, where he passed away, mashallah. So you can see that he spent a lot of time in that city of Damascus. Imam an-Nawawiyy would never play with the other children when he was young. While the other children played, he would go and memorize the Quran, and he memorized it and had it complete before puberty, mashallah. He was a special child. When he was 7 years old, on the 27th of Ramadan, he woke up at night and he saw a lot of light in his room, a bright light in his room. So he woke up his father and asked him what it was, but his father couldn't help him because he couldn't see anything, mashallah. He didn't see any light in the room. So then they woke up the rest of the household and they also could not see anything, subhanallah. And they realized from this that it was Laylatul Qadr. And Imam an-Nawawiyy saw it, and he was only a young child, mashallah. Al-Shaykh Yasin ibn Yusuf al-Marrakishi was a well-known righteous and pious man who would eventually become an-Nawawiy's teacher in the tariqah. And he had a lot of love towards Imam an-Nawawiyy. And what had occurred once is that he saw some children trying to force Imam an-Nawawiyy to play with them. But Imam an-Nawawiyy, who was a child at that time, would not pay attention to them, and he would ignore them, and he actually ran away from them so that he can read the Quran, mashallah. And this impressed him, and he was surprised by this. So this pious Muslim went to Imam an-Nawawiy's teacher and told him that he would take care of Imam an-Nawawiyy, and that he was going to be something special, mashallah. So then his Quran teacher asked him, how did he know this? Was he an astrologer? And he replied to him, no, that he wasn't an astrologer, but these are words that Allah Ta'ala inspired him to say. Right? These are words that he had to say. This was a feeling that occurred to him, and Allah Ta'ala made him do this, mashallah. So then the teacher informed Imam an-Nawawiy's father what had occurred with this pious Muslim. And ever since that incident, Imam an-Nawawiy's father took extra care of Imam an-Nawawiyy and paid more attention to him and encouraged him and made him memorize the Quran before puberty. So he had an important role, mashallah. When he was 19 years old, his father took him to Damascus, and he stayed there in a school called al-Madrasatul Rawahiyyah. And he stayed there for many years as a student of knowledge, and he never ate much, mashallah. He would only eat from the food that was waqf, or from the food that his parents would send to him. And they would send him things like figs, they would send him ka'k, they would send him something called kishk. And he would eat kishk often, Imam an-Nawawiyy. And there's a funny story actually about kishk and Imam an-Nawawiyy, mashallah. He had a friend, Imam an-Nawawiyy had a friend who would visit him, and they used to study together. And whenever his friend arrived, Imam an-Nawawiyy would get up, stand up, and he would give him kishk to eat. And he would eat kishk every day. So whenever his friend would come, Imam an-Nawawi would give him kishk. He would come the next day, kishk again, kishk again, kishk again, kishk again. And this is all they used to eat, subhanallah, mashallah. So one day his friend didn't show up. So Imam an-Nawawi got worried. He's like, where's my friend? So he got up, he got some kishk with him, and he went to his house. So when he went to his house, he knocked on the door. Imam an-Nawawi knocked on the door. His friend opened, and when he opened, he saw the kishk, in his hand. And he told him, Ya Imam, O Shaykhi, O my teacher, I love you, but I don't love kishk. MashaAllah. Imam an-Nawawi lived in Damascus for approximately 20 years. The entire time he was there, he refrained from eating any of the fruits from Damascus. His parents used to send him food, and this is what he would eat. They would send him food from their village, and he would eat that. And he was reluctant to eat from the fruits of Damascus because a large portion of Damascus is waqf. It was something that is designated for a specific purpose. And also a large portion of it belonged to orphans. A large portion of the land belonged to orphans. So most people are not careful when it comes to dealing with waqf or dealing with the property of orphans. So this is what he feared. So for this reason, he never used to eat any of those fruits. And another reason also is because at that time, people, what they would do, they would take a portion of a plant and they would put it into a secondary plant to make it grow faster, or to make it grow better, or for it to produce better fruits. So they would take a portion, or they would take a piece of a plant from somebody's land and they would put it into their land for their crops to grow. And the problem was that they would not ask permission of the landowner. They would not ask permission. And Islamically, you need to ask permission. So this is also why he feared eating from the fruits of Damascus. So for this reason, he didn't eat from it. And this is something called wara in Arabic, right? Islamically, this is wara, which means to be cautious or extra cautious. And he was very, very cautious when it came to dealing with these matters, especially Islamically. And having wara is praised in Islam. This is a very praised attribute. Al-Bukhari narrated that the Prophet ﷺ said, إِنِّي لَأَنْقَلِبُ إِلَى دَارِي فَأَجِدُ التَّمْرَةَ سَاقِطَةً عَلَى فِرَاشِي فَأُهْوِي فَأَدَعُهَا خَشْيَةَ أَن تَكُونَ مِنَ الصَّدَقَةِ. And this means that the Prophet ﷺ said, I go to my home and I find a date on my bed and I go to grab it, but I stop and leave it out of fear that this might be from the sadaqah. This is an example of wara. Imagine if you find something on your bed. Subhanallah, how likely is it going to be from somebody else? Not likely. Most likely if you find something on your bed, it belongs to you. Right? Subhanallah. But the Prophet ﷺ feared that this was something that was given to him from sadaqah. And this is a very good example of having wara, of being cautious. Also, there is an example of Imam Abu Hanifa, this great scholar in Islam. Once there was a goat that was stolen in his city. So he asked, how long does a goat usually live? They told him about 7 to 8 years. So he did not eat goat meat for 8 years. Even though if he did eat it, it wouldn't have been haram, it wouldn't have been a sin. But this is from the wara. Another great example is Abu Bakr, the great companion of the Prophet ﷺ. He had a servant that used to work for him. And this servant would go bring Abu Bakr some fruits from his garden, from Abu Bakr's garden. And one day, this servant asked Abu Bakr, do you know what you're eating from? And Abu Bakr told him no. And the servant told Abu Bakr that during the era of ignorance, he used to work as a fortune teller. So this servant used to work as a fortune teller. And making money from this is haram, it's not permissible. And he used to trick the people. And what Abu Bakr was eating, he informed him what he was eating from was something that he bought with that money. So Abu Bakr, who fears Allah, and he didn't even know, subhanallah, but he did not want that food to stay in his stomach. So what did he do? He put his finger in his mouth and he began to force himself to vomit that thing out. Subhanallah. It was narrated in the Athar, إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَسْأَلُ عَنِ الْإِبْرَةِ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. Verily Allah will ask about the needle on the Day of Judgment. And yes, brothers and sisters, we are accountable for everything, from the big matters to the small matters. So having this wara, having cautiousness in the religion is praised and it's something very good. And this great Imam an-Nawawi, had wara. So Imam an-Nawawi stayed in that school, Al-Madrasatul Rawahiyya, for 2 years. Then his father took him to Mecca to perform Hajj. So he went to Medina, he stayed in Medina for about a month and a half, then he stayed for a period of time in Mecca. And his father said when he left Nawa for Hajj, an-Nawawi got very sick. He was sick for the entire duration of the trip. And his father mentioned that he did not hear an-Nawawi complain at all for the whole duration, subhanallah. And during the trip, an-Nawawi would ask Allah to increase his knowledge. And when he returned to Damascus, his father said about Imam an-Nawawi, "In sabba alayhi al-ilmu sabba," which is a comparative analogy, which means literally, it means that the knowledge was poured onto him, onto Imam an-Nawawi. So over here, this is an indication of the high knowledge and the amount of knowledge that Imam an-Nawawi had, and that Allah Ta'ala facilitated for him this great amount and vast knowledge, mashaAllah. And he would sit with the people of knowledge, and he would take about 12 lessons every day in different fields of knowledge. And after he took those lessons, he would review it. He would spend his whole time learning, reviewing, and teaching, mashaAllah. And some of Imam an-Nawawi's friends would come and visit him. But there would be a problem. They wouldn't find a place to sit. They wouldn't find a place to sit in his room, mashaAllah. And it wasn't because Imam an-Nawawi had a bunch of junk laying around or that he was untidy, no. But he had so many books. He had so many books that he would read and review that they couldn't find a place to sit. So Imam an-Nawawi would get up, he would move some of the books around and find a place for them to sit. And then he would keep them company, right? Imam an-Nawawi, being a generous host, he would talk to them and he would keep them company. But he would do this for a short time, right? Because we're talking about a man who had knowledge and he used to love reading and he used to love learning. Right, so he would keep them company, his friends company, for a short time. Then eventually he would go and he would give them a book and he would tell them to review it. Take advantage of your time, read this book. It's good that you came and you visited me, yes, and I enjoy it, but let's learn something, let's review something, let's increase our knowledge. MashaAllah. This is the great Imam an-Nawawi. May Allah Ta'ala raise his rank. Ameen. And adding to the fact that Imam an-Nawawi had a lot of love and desire to learn, he was also a very blessed man. MashaAllah. And he used to give good advice. And there was a man named Waliyuddin Abul Hasan Ali. And this man became very ill and his foot became swollen enormously and it caused him a lot of pain, subhanallah. So what happened? Imam an-Nawawi visited him and started to talk to him. And this man, Waliyuddin, narrating his story, said that when Imam an-Nawawi came, he began with the Alhamdulillah, and then he mentioned the Salah on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Then he began to advise him about being patient. And he said that Imam an-Nawawi, when he spoke, the pain would decrease. And then he would speak again, and then more pain would decrease. And he would keep on talking and keep on giving him advice until all of the pain completely faded. MashaAllah. This is the great Imam an-Nawawi. May Allah Ta'ala raise his rank. And there's also an incident that occurred to the Hafiz, the Mujtahid Taqiyuddin as-Subki. This great scholar used to teach in the same school of Imam an-Nawawi. Imam an-Nawawi taught in that school before him, and the name of the school is Al-Madrasatul Ashrafiyah. So these two great heavyweight scholars in Islam taught in the same school, but Imam an-Nawawi taught in it before Taqiyuddin as-Subki. And what Imam an-Nawawi used to do is, whenever he would give a lesson, he would go and he would sit on a specific carpet, and he would sit on there and he would give his lessons. That's how he used to do it. So Taqiyuddin as-Subki, who came in after Imam an-Nawawi, who taught in that same school, Taqiyuddin, what would he do? He would go to the same place that Imam an-Nawawi would give the lesson on that carpet, and he would seek the blessings from that carpet. He would make tabarruk. Why? Because of the great status and level of this great Imam who used to teach on that carpet, who was Imam an-Nawawi. And his son, the son of Taqiyuddin as-Subki, whose name is Tajuddin, he authored some lines of poetry about this. And he said, وَفِي دَارِ الْحَدِيثِ لَطِيفُ مَعْنًا عَلَى بُسُطٍ لَهَا أَصْبُ وَآوِي عَسَى أَنْ أَمَسَّ بِجُرِّ وَجْهِي مَكَانًا مَسَّهُ قَدَمُ النَّوَاوِي. MashaAllah. And notice how he said an-Nawawi. He didn't say an-Nawawi, because you can call him an-Nawawi and you can call him an-Nawawi. So he said مَكَانًا مَسَّهُ قَدَمُ النَّوَاوِي. And the meaning of these lines of poetry are, in the school of hadith there is something blessed. And the school of hadith that he's mentioning here is that madrasa, al-Madrasatul Ashrafiyah. So he said, in the school of hadith there is something blessed. On its carpets I go and seek, hoping that my face touches a place where an-Nawawi's foot was placed. MashaAllah. MashaAllah. So you can notice over here that even the great scholars in Islam recognize the status and level of Imam an-Nawawi, and they would seek tabarruk from the places that he used to be. May Allah Ta'ala raise their ranks. And Imam an-Nawawi never used to eat a lot. Why? Because eating too much, what does it do? It prevents a person from excelling in worship. Right? Subhanallah. Eating a lot makes a person, what happens to him? It makes him full. And when a person eats a lot, they drink a lot. And when they drink a lot, what happens? They sleep a lot. And if you sleep a lot, you're gonna miss a lot of goodness in your life. So they never used to eat much, the true pious Muslim, the true Sufis. And Imam an-Nawawi, he never used to eat a lot because of this. And the true Sufis, what do they say? They say, Al-waqtu a'azzu al-ashiya'i alayka, fashghalhu bi'a'azzi al-ashiya'. Allah Rabbil Alameen. Time is the most valuable thing, so spend it in the most valuable thing, worshipping Allah, the Lord of the worlds. MashaAllah. And Imam an-Nawawi died at the age of 46. Before he passed away, he went to Palestine and he visited Prophet Ibrahim al-Khalil. Then he returned to the city of Nawa. And after reaching Nawa, he got really sick and he died about 2 or 3 days after that. Inshallah. He was born the year of 630 after Hijrah. Some said 631. He died the year of 676 after Hijrah. And even though, notice, even though he did not live a long life, he authored many treasured books. Many treasured books, many valuable books. And among these priceless, valuable books are Al-Arba'in an-Nawawiyya, the 40 Hadith of an-Nawawi. There is a book called Al-Minhaj. There is also Rawdat al-Talibin. There is Irshadu Tullab al-Haqa'iq. There is the book Al-Iqtirah. He also did an explanation of Sahih Muslim, which is very valuable. He also did an explanation of Sahih al-Bukhari, but that's incomplete. It didn't finish. He also did an explanation of Abu Dawood, the hadiths that were mentioned by Abu Dawood in his book. And this is also incomplete. There is the book Al-Majmu'. There is the book Riyadus Salihin. There is the book Al-Adhkar, and even more. Subhanallah. He authored many books, many valuable books. And in his book Al-Majmu', he made the takfir on the Mujassim. This is something important to know. Among the precious jewels of Tawheed, of the belief of Muslims, that he mentioned in one of his books, the book Al-Majmu', he made takfir on the Mujassim. And which is basically, he mentioned in his book that the one who believes that Allah is a body is not a Muslim. He mentioned this explicitly, that the one who believes Allah Ta'ala is a body, has bodily attributes, or has body parts, is not a Muslim. And this is from the belief of Muslims all over the world, that Allah Ta'ala does not resemble any of His creation in any way whatsoever. He's not up, He is not down, He doesn't have a left, He doesn't have a right, no forward, no backward. The 6 directions do not apply to Him, and He is not a body. He does not have literal eyes, He does not have a literal face, He doesn't have these bodily attributes. Right? And the one who believes this is a mujassim. The one who believes Allah is a body is considered to be a mujassim. And this great Imam an-Nawawi, mentioned that the one who believes Allah is a body is not a Muslim, because he's going against the Quran, he's contradicting the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he's going against the ijma', the saying of the scholars, and he's going against the fundamental belief and the logic. Right? MashaAllah. May Allah Ta'ala raise this great scholar, Imam an-Nawawi. And when he passed away, Imam an-Nawawi, some of his relatives wanted to build a structure over his grave. And there was kind of a dispute. They didn't know if they should or if they shouldn't. And in the Muslim cemeteries, you cannot do this except for an excuse, such as fearing that an animal would come and dig up the grave and eat the corpse, or you fear that the people would come and dig the grave and bury someone else in that same grave before the first body decays. There are certain excuses which allow you to build a building over the grave. But they had this dispute. They didn't know if they should or if they shouldn't. So his aunt went to sleep and she saw Imam an-Nawawi in her dream, and he told her to tell his relatives not to build anything. So she woke up and she told them what happened, and they decided not to build anything over his grave. MashaAllah. So they just went there and they put a stone over his grave. And MashaAllah, his grave is a very blessed place. Alhamdulillah, I had the honor. I was able to visit it when I was there in Syria before the war, before all this, the catastrophe that's going on. It's a very blessed place, MashaAllah. And there's a huge tree growing right where he's buried. A huge tree, MashaAllah. And there is a very beautiful scent that emanates from that grave. When you go into that maqam, that area, you notice and you can just feel that there's uns, there is comfort, and there's barakah in that area, MashaAllah. And some of my teachers mentioned to me that they visited Imam an-Nawawi, and when they went there, they said, "Ya Imam an-Nawawi, if these things that were mentioned in your book are not true, then give us a sign." Because Imam an-Nawawi, just to let you know, there are certain things in his book which you don't attribute to him, or there's certain things that need to be clarified for the person who's reading some of his books. So they said, if these things that were found in your book are not from you, then give us a sign. Give us a sign. So as soon as he said that, a beautiful scent emanated from the maqam, from that area, mashallah, and you couldn't ignore it. Imagine standing there, you say these words, and all of a sudden you feel that there's something coming out of the grave and the maqam, and you smell that beautiful scent, mashallah. This is the great Imam an-Nawawiyy, inshallah. May Allah Ta'ala raise his rank. And unfortunately, subhanallah, his maqam has been destroyed. The Wahhabis, those who resemble Allah Ta'ala to the creation, they believe that visiting the graves of the pious people, if you were to do that you are worshipping them. And this is not incorrect. This is incorrect. This is not true. This is false to believe that. But this is what they do. They make takfir on all of the Muslim ummah. So because of the Syrian war, what's going on over there, and there's a lot of Wahhabis over there who believe this, they've been destroying many of the maqams and the pious Muslims' graves. Subhanallah. So they actually destroyed it. They blew it up. And may Allah Ta'ala, subhanallah, strengthen the Muslim ummah. Subhanallah. But Imam an-Nawawiyy still has a great rank. He still has a high status. We ask Allah Ta'ala to raise his rank even more and to make us benefit from his knowledge. Ameen. And after Imam an-Nawawiyy died, there was a man who would always insult Imam an-Nawawiyy, and he would gossip behind his back. So what happened to this man? Subhanallah, something very strange. When this man who used to gossip about Imam an-Nawawiyy passed away, when he died, an animal like a cat came to his grave, dug up his body, ripped his tongue out and left. Subhanallah, it ripped his tongue out and left. And this is an indication that you do not gossip and you do not talk bad about this great scholar in Islam. And this is what they say. This is why they say in Arabic, Juludul ulama masmuma, which means the skin of the ulama, of the scholars in Islam, is poison. And what they mean by this is that you do not insult and you do not talk bad about the great scholars in Islam. And if you do so, you are only harming yourself. Like the person who drinks poison. If a person goes and he drinks poison, who are they harming? They're going to harm themselves. Likewise, if you gossip and you talk bad about the great scholars in Islam who've done so much for this religion, you're only harming yourself. And this man who used to gossip and insult this great scholar, Imam an-Nawawiyy, he was only harming himself because he was falling into sin. Subhanallah, may Allah Ta'ala forgive us. And there's a very famous incident that occurred to Imam an-Nawawiyy, mashallah. Once he was at night and he was authoring a book and he was using the light of a lantern, and all of a sudden the lantern burned out. Subhanallah, the flame extinguished while he was writing, and all of a sudden his finger began to illuminate. His finger began to illuminate, so he was able to continue writing under the light of his finger. MashaAllah, this is a karamah that Allah Ta'ala gave this great man, this great Imam, this scholar, Imam an-Nawawiyy, so that he can continue writing. And he was writing for the sake of Allah, so that we may benefit. Subhanallah. And alhamdulillah, we are benefiting now. May Allah Ta'ala raise his rank. Ameen. Now before we go and give a brief introduction to the book 40 Hadith of an-Nawawiyy, and before we talk about its origins and why the scholars of Islam exerted effort in gathering 40 Hadiths in particular, there's a certain clarification in some matters that were found in Imam an-Nawawiy's book. So Imam an-Nawawiyy, MashaAllah, he used to author a lot. And in a few of Imam an-Nawawiy's books, there are some matters that the scholars objected to. Okay? His book, Rawdatul Talibin, is an example. It is a very valuable and precious book that gathers many matters that were not gathered in a book before. So it's very important, MashaAllah. This book, however, has things in it that a person should be aware of. An-Nawawiyy used to be extremely busy and he used to write a lot. And this is one reason why he was not able to review the book the way that he wanted. Okay, MashaAllah. And Imam an-Nawawiyy knew that this book was not reviewed properly and completely. So before his death, what did he do? He ordered some of his students to wash it. And in the past, they used to write on washable ink. Right? They used to write on washable ink. They didn't have typewriters or printers or computers to author books or things like that. No. Right? They would actually write on tablets or paper, and they could wash the ink if they wanted to. So this is what he ordered them to do. So if the pages were washed, the information would be washed away. This was his goal. And when his students asked him why he wanted to do that, he told them that he did not review it thoroughly and that it might have some errors in it. Right? So he explained to them why, MashaAllah. And they told him even if they washed this copy, there were already many copies written and distributed. But they still washed it, subhanAllah, and approximately 1,000 chapters were washed away, brothers and sisters. Approximately 1,000 chapters washed away. And each chapter has about 20 pages. So that's approximately 20,000 pages that were washed away. MashaAllah. Alright, so Imam an-Nawawi knew this and he recognized this and he did exert effort to correcting it. But subhanAllah, there were many books that were already written and distributed. MashaAllah. Now the first clarification pertains to the Mu'tazila. Now some important introductory information about them. The Mu'tazila are a deviant group. Right? This group has many incorrect ideologies. Some of their misunderstandings are blasphemous and some are not blasphemous but are still incorrect. Right? So the Mu'tazila are divided into two. Those who have blasphemed and those who have not blasphemed but are still, and their beliefs are incorrect and they are major sinners. Now it's important to understand that it is invalid and blasphemous to take a non-Muslim as an imam in prayer. Right? You cannot go pray behind someone who is not a Muslim. And if a person does this knowingly, the person who is following him who does this exits the religion of Islam. Now since the Mu'tazila are divided into two groups, non-Muslims and Muslims who are major sinners, it is technically valid, although not encouraged, to pray behind the Mu'tazili who has not blasphemed. Right? Which one? Behind the Mu'tazili who has not blasphemed. So it's valid, and I'm not encouraging you to go pray behind a major sinner, but it's important to understand that the prayer would be valid if you prayed behind the Mu'tazili who has not blasphemed. Okay? Now this is only in terms of the validity of the prayer. However, it is better to pray behind someone who is not a major sinner, of course. Right? Subhanallah. Now among the matters that require prudency is where it says in this book that the prayer is valid behind a Mu'tazili. Imam an-Nawawi mentioned this statement and it was general. He didn't clarify and he didn't mention this clarification that the Mu'tazila are divided into two and that some of them are not Muslims and some of them are Muslims. He didn't clarify it like this. He mentioned a general statement. Now we know that this is not the case in all situations to pray behind any Mu'tazila, any of the Mu'tazila. Now Imam an-Nawawi, like I mentioned, he did not elaborate upon when it's valid and when it is invalid to pray behind a Mu'tazili. He didn't elaborate on this point. And the meaning of Imam an-Nawawi's statement is that it is, as far as the prayer is concerned, it is valid to pray behind the Mu'tazili who did not reach the levels of blasphemy. So this is what he meant when he said that general statement. He did not mean that it's valid to pray behind the Mu'tazili who blasphemed, who has beliefs that are blasphemous. He did not mean that. Right? What did he mean? He meant that it's valid to pray behind the Mu'tazili who did not reach the levels of blasphemy. Okay? MashaAllah. He did not mean to say that it's valid to pray behind all types of the Mu'tazila, including those who believed that the slave creates his own actions, because this is some of the blasphemous beliefs of the Mu'tazila. Some of the Mu'tazila believe that Allah Ta'ala does not create everything. They believe that the human, the individual, he creates his own voluntary actions. Now this is blasphemous, and this is explicit blasphemy, and this is something that takes a person out of Islam. Alright, so Imam an-Nawawi, when he said that it's valid to pray behind the Mu'tazili, he did not mean the one who believes something like this, the one who believes that Allah Ta'ala doesn't create all of the actions. So it's very, very important to understand that the Mu'tazila are divided into two. One group is a group that are not Muslims who have blasphemous beliefs, and it's not valid to pray behind them. And the second category are the Mu'tazila who their ideologies and beliefs have not led them to blasphemy, but their beliefs are incorrect and they are considered to be major sinners. The second category, technically it's valid to pray behind them, but it's not encouraged. Alright, so the second group is valid to pray behind them, and this is what Imam an-Nawawi meant when he said this. Now what further clarifies Imam an-Nawawi's intention is what he mentioned in other books. Right? In his other books, mashallah, he stated that it's blasphemous to believe that the slave create their own actions. He mentioned this, that it's blasphemous to believe this. So we look at, after analyzing his statement and looking at what he mentioned in other books, it's very clear and obvious that Imam an-Nawawi did not mean that it's valid to pray behind a person who is a non-Muslim who has blasphemous beliefs, like the first category of the Mu'tazila, those who believe that Allah doesn't create all the actions of the slave. All right, so this is very, very important, and this is a clarification that a person needs to understand. Now that we have mentioned a brief biography of the great Imam an-Nawawiyy, we mentioned a clarification of something that was mentioned in his book. Now we will talk about the actual book, 40 Hadith of an-Nawawiyy, and we'll mention a brief introduction to it, inshaAllah. Now the original title of an-Nawawiy's book is Al-Arba'una fi Mabani al-Islam wa Qawa'id al-Ahkam. Right, that is the original title of the book, Al-Arba'una fi Mabani al-Islam wa Qawa'id al-Ahkam. It is a very precious book that contains hadiths about Islamic etiquette, fiqh, belief, and more. An-Nawawiyy exerted a great deal of effort to gather these hadiths that deal with some of the most important Islamic issues, mashallah. Now, despite the enormous benefits that are contained within the pages of this book, it is a book that is still considered to be for beginners, mashallah. Now, due to an-Nawawiy's popularity, people started calling it Al-Arba'un an-Nawawiyyah, which means the 40 Nawawi Hadiths. And this is what its popular name, mashallah. And collecting 40 hadiths has always been a habit of Islamic scholars for many years. This is something that they have been doing in the past, to collect 40 hadiths. Now, by doing so, they hope to implement and to be among those mentioned in the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where he said, "Man hafidha ala ummati arba'ina haditha min amri diniha ba'athahu Allahu yawm al-qiyamati fi zumrati al-fuqaha'i wal-ulama." MashaAllah. Which means whoever protects for my nation 40 hadiths that pertain to the religion, Allah will resurrect him with the scholars on the Day of Judgment. So because of this hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the scholars in the past exerted a great deal of effort to compile a book which would have 40 hadith on any topic, whatever topic they wanted to be. MashaAllah. Now there have been books that have been compiled about 40 hadiths. Some scholars would collect 40 hadith about Sufism. Some would collect the first hadith that they learned from 40 books. Right, the first hadith that they learned from 40 books. And some scholars would gather hadith that they learned while traveling to different cities. So they would travel to a city, the hadith that they learned in that city, they would put it into their book. Then they would travel to another city and put a hadith that they learned in that city into the book. So that's 2 hadith. And like that. So they'd keep on traveling until they finally completed their book. MashaAllah. So this is how they used to do it in the past. MashaAllah. So the hadith once again is, whoever protects from my nation 40 hadiths that pertain to the religion, Allah will resurrect him with the scholars on the Day of Judgment. Allah will resurrect him with the scholars on the Day of Judgment. MashaAllah. Now, how does a person protect hadith from being lost? How does a person protect hadith from being lost? By authoring books and conveying them. And this is what is meant. And this is why the scholars of Islam authored these books and they conveyed them. Right? MashaAllah. You protect knowledge by authoring books. And this is why the scholars of Islam exerted this effort. Now, even though this hadith is weak, the scholars said that it is permissible to narrate and implement a weak hadith if it pertains to the merits of good deeds. فَضَائِلُ الْأَعْمَالِ. The hadith that we just mentioned that encourages people to protect 40 hadiths pertains to the merit of a good specific deed, which is to convey the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, however, there are conditions for this to be valid. In order for you to narrate a weak hadith in the Fada'ilul A'mal, the merit of good deeds, there are conditions. Now, among the conditions is that the hadith cannot be extremely weak. For example, it cannot have a narrator that is considered to be a kadhib, a liar, or a narrator that is fahishul khata, that makes a lot of mistakes. So that's one condition. Another condition is that the hadith cannot be narrated from only one person. It cannot be narrated from only one person. And the third condition is that the hadith falls under a general guideline in the religion. Right? The hadith that you want to mention in the Fada'ilul A'mal, in the merit of good deeds, it must fall under a general guideline in the religion. I'll give you an example. For example, the hadith about the dua for the marketplace, right? There's a very specific and popular dua that you recite when you enter a marketplace or if you're walking through a marketplace. So this hadith that encourages people to mention this dhikr or this dua when a person is in the market falls under a general rule, which is to make dhikr, right? MashaAllah. And this dua that a person should say is La ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah lahul mulku wa lahul hamd yuhyi wa yumit wa huwa hayyun la yamut biyadihi al-khayr wa huwa ala kulli shay'in qadir. And this hadith states that whoever recites this while they are in the marketplace gets 1,000,000 reward. So whoever recites this dhikr, this dua, when they're in a marketplace will get 1,000,000 hasanat, 1,000,000 good deeds, insha'Allah ta'ala. So even though this hadith is weak, it falls under a general guideline in the religion, which is to make dua. Right? So this is what we mean by the third condition, mashallah. Now it's important to understand that the validity of using a weak hadith with the aforementioned conditions relates to the hadiths that deal with the merits of good deeds, fadailul a'mal, okay? Thus you cannot use a weak hadith to substantiate a matter that deals with the ahkam, the rules, or the aqidah, the belief. Right, so you learn these conditions, for example, these three conditions, then you have a weak hadith, and then you want to apply it to something that relates to the ahkam or the aqidah. You cannot do that. Right? So in order for you to mention a weak hadith with these conditions, with these three conditions, it's important and the hadith must relate to something that deals with the merits of good deeds. Right? So this is very, very important to understand. Now let's talk about the origins of this book, the 40 Hadith of an-Nawawiyy. So there was a great scholar in Islam who was a muhaddith. His name is Abu Amr ibn Salah, and he lived before Imam an-Nawawiyy. So what this scholar did, he conducted a session in which he mentioned 27 hadiths with their chains of narrations. So he did this, 27 hadiths with their chain of narrations, and he mentioned it. So a book was compiled from those hadiths, and Ibn Salah entitled that book Majlis al-Qawa'idul Kulliyah. Right, this is what he called it, Majlis al-Qawa'idul Kulliyah. Then Imam an-Nawawiyy later, he came along and he took those hadiths and he added 3 more to it. So you have a total of 30. So he mentioned those 30 hadiths in his book Al-Adhkar. Then he took those 30 hadiths and he added 12 more, and he called the book the 40 Hadith of an-Nawawiyy. So this is what we have right now. So this is the progress of it. First you had Ibn Salah, who authored a book that had 27 hadith. Then Imam an-Nawawiyy came along and he added 3 more to those 27, and he had 30. And then he came along again, Imam an-Nawawiyy added more to it later on. He added 12 more to it, and he entitled the book the 40 Nawawiyy Hadiths. MashaAllah. And this is what we have. This is what we have now. MashaAllah. May Allah Ta'ala reward this great scholar. It's important, just a quick benefit. The first person to compile 40 hadiths in a book was Abdullah ibn Mubarak. Right? As we mentioned earlier, many scholars in the past, they did this. The first one to ever do this was Abdullah ibn Mubarak. And I would like to also point out that there are actually 42 hadiths in Imam an-Nawawiy's book. 42, even though we call it the 40 hadith of an-Nawawiyy, there are actually 42 hadiths, mashallah. One of the last 2 re-emphasizes a point that was mentioned earlier in the book, and the second is like a khatima, like a conclusion to the book, mashallah. And the hadiths that were mentioned by Imam an-Nawawiyy are meant to guide a person to do other similar good deeds, right? They're meant to be a guide for him. He did not mention all of the good deeds, right? Of course, it's a general book, mashallah. It's a very beneficial book, but he didn't encompass everything in it, right? He mentioned the general cases, and he made his book in a way that it guides a person to do other similar good deeds, mashallah. And before we end, the last thing I want to mention, I want to share with you a few different narrations to the hadith that encourages us to convey 40 hadiths. I would like to share some different narrations, inshaAllah ta'ala. And these different narrations carry and they convey a similar meaning. Alright, so we mentioned the first one, من حفظ على أمتي 40 حديثا من أمر دينها بعثه الله يوم القيامة في زمرة الفقهاء والعلماء. Right, this is the first hadith that we mentioned earlier. Another narration to it is that was narrated by Abu Darda, وَكُنْتُ لَهُ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ شَافِعًا وَشَهِيدًا. That the Prophet ﷺ said, the one who conveys the 40 hadith that pertain to his religion, that the Prophet will be for him, an interceder on the Day of Judgment, and he will be a witness for him. MashaAllah. And there's another narration by Ibn Mas'ud where the Prophet ﷺ said, قِيلَ لَهُ دُخُلْ مِنْ أَيِّ أَبْوَابِ الْجَنَّةِ شِئْتَ, that it will be said to the person, enter from any doors of paradise that you wish. MashaAllah. MashaAllah. May Allah Ta'ala enable us to be steadfast and to be perseverant. Barakallahu feekum for attending the lesson, for listening, and ask Allah Ta'ala to grant us the sincere intention. And remind you to work hard in the religion, insha'Allah Ta'ala, and make dua for us. Barakallahu feekum, ahsanallahu ilaykum. Walhamdulillah, awwalan wa akhirah.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. If you liked it, check out the rest of our series. And donate for the sake of Allah so that we may continue spreading the obligatory knowledge to Muslims all over the world. Barakallahu feekum. May Allah accept your deeds.